So let's factor this into two parts. The square root of x to the 9th power is no different than the square root of x to the 8th times the square root of x to the 1st. The 8 and the 1 make my 9 right there. Now, why did we do that? Well, because that's an odd number. If you have an odd number as an exponent inside square root, you can always split that and get an even number. Once you get an even number, I can just take this information right here and I can say the square root of x to the 8th is really just x to the 4th. I just cut that number in half. Let me explain to you why we cut that number in half. We should know by now that x to the power of m over n is really just equal to the nth root of x to the power of m. This is something you should already have memorized. Now, if you think about what this is saying, think about what number is here on a square root. We don't ever show it. We don't write that value down. But when you take the square root of something, it's like having a 2 right there. Now, if we go to a cube root, we actually plug the 3 in, or the 4th root, we plug the 4 in. But we don't show the 2 when we're taking a square root of something. But if you look at what this is saying, and then you go up to this rule, n is 2, m is 8. So what this really is x to the 8 over 2. And now 8 divided by 2 is just going to turn into 4. That's why if you had the square root of x to the 12th power, you can just immediately simplify that down to x to the 6th. You just cut that value in half. Okay, so now that we understand that, we're going to be able to tackle some of the more complex problems. I got 2 examples that I'm going to go over with you here in just about 1 minute. So we've got x to the 4th, that's this part simplified. Now we still need to multiply it by the square root of x times square root of x. This would be your final answer when simplifying the square root of x to the 9th power. Okay, let's use that idea for what we're about to go into. Let me get those problems drawn. All right, so let's start with this one right here. How would we simplify this down as much as we can? Well, the first thing I notice is that I got a square root of an odd exponent. So what I need to do is I need to split this part up into 2 parts. I need to factor that out into the square root of an even exponent times the square root of an odd exponent. So I can say x to the 10th times x to the 1st. The 10 and the 1 would make the 11. But I look at this and I say the square root of x to the 10th. Remember that rule we just talked about? We can just cut that 10 in half. So this is really giving me x to the 5th. Now, don't forget about your x to the 4th. That needs to be coming down along for the ride this whole time. X to the 4th times that, x to the 4th times this. So we're going to need to combine those using the product rule. And then we still have the square root of x all by itself on the end, which we can't simplify that any further. That's as simplified as we can go with that. Now, don't make a mistake here. Sometimes I'll have kids that do all this work and they want to multiply the 4 and the 5. Remember the product rule. Anything bases are the same, we add our exponents when we're multiplying. So 4 plus 5 is going to give me x to the 9th root x. Final answer in the box. Simplified from x to the 4th times the square root of x to the 11th power. This is what you should get. Okay, let's do that same thing over here. So we already talked about x to the 11th power and how we can split that up into an x to the 10th and an x to the 1st. But 36, well, that's a good number to have underneath a radical. So square root of 36 is 6. And we have square root of x to the 10th times square root of x to the 1st, just like we did over here. Again, remember, if we're taking the square root of an even exponent, we can just cut that value in half. So this would be 6. X to the half of 10 is 5. And then we cannot simplify this at all. So our final answer would be 6x to the 5th power times root x. Hopefully this makes sense. Practice these problems. The more of them you do, the easier it gets. Study hard and good luck on your upcoming test.